Well, you all know what day it is. And although I couldn't do my countdown this year, don't think I haven't planned something special for all of you who have patiently waited for one of the greatest holidays of the year. And my second personal favorite. And as a narrator, my favorite. Yes, it's Halloween at last, and I have something very special planned for all of you. After going on a horror binge last night, I found a video from a YouTuber called Mr. Nightmare, one of my favorites. And what he did was he had 8 stories lined up to scare the hell out of you. But here's the twist. He only did half of them. He had help from Mr. Creepypasta. Now, of course I don't have Mr. Creepypasta on hand, but what I do have is my closest narrating friend, Master or Horror, who, very graciously at the last minute, was able to accept my offer and do 4 of the 8 stories I'll be presenting to you all tonight. I am here to do an 8-story marathon of short stories, and on my last story, it will be a surprise. One that I'm working on already. But it's going to be great, and I guarantee you it'll be a Halloween marathon that you won't want to miss. So, without further ado, I introduce to you my greatest narrating friend, Master O' Horror.
A little girl named Penny Warren was given a small doll by her parents. The doll was a gift from an ancient great-aunt who had now passed on. Penny was instantly unnerved by the doll, which had nasty little black eyes that seemed to follow her around the room and a sinister grin on her face. Nevertheless, Penny had to accept the doll, as she was well brought up and didn't want to upset her parents by refusing to take it. Her parents told her that the doll's name was Arabella, which made Penny even more afraid of it. It seemed to make it more human. Even so, it was just a doll, barely reaching above her knee, so to put her mind at rest, she hid Arabella in the little cupboard under the stairs, under some boxes where her parents wouldn't see it. It wasn't until a few nights later, when Penny was lying in bed, that she heard a noise. A shuffling sound that went on for about 5 minutes. Then a brief dragging noise, and finally, a scuttling like light footsteps running very fast. Penny was paralyzed with fear, her knuckles turning white from clutching her blanket. Then she heard a voice, soft and eerily childlike, quiet enough not to wake her parents. Penny always slept with the door open and the lamp in the hall on, as she was still a little scared of the dark. She could hear more through her open door. Penny heard the voice say,
"Penny, I'm on the first step."
And then a loud scrabbling again, as whatever was speaking apparently turned tail and returned to wherever it had come from. The little girl didn't sleep a wink that night, but laid in fear until the break of dawn when her mother got her up for school, and when she tried to explain what had happened, her parents passed it off as just a dream. The next night, Penny fought against sleep, but eventually drifted off, only to be awoken again by the sinister voice.
"Penny, I'm on the 5th step."
Penny was crying by now, and again she didn't sleep that night. The next night, Penny decided to shut her bedroom door and reluctantly slept without the lights on. Just as she was about to doze, Penny heard the noise, and then the voice.
"Penny, I'm on the top step."
Penny knew that her door was closed, but she was still terribly afraid. Her heart pounding, she slowly got up to investigate, She screamed. Penny's parents found her body at the bottom of the stairs. They guessed she was on her way to the bathroom without switching on the hall light and had fallen down the stairs, breaking her neck. Arabella, the favorite family doll, was found beside her body, smiling. Many cultures have their own version of the boogeyman, a monster that lurks in the darkness, waiting to take children away to their shadowy domain. The weird thing is that sometimes kids see it before they even hear the stories about them. They feel the presence of something in their room, sometimes just outside their door or at the far end of a dark hallway. It is quite probable that this monster actually evolved as a survival technique, dating back to times when humans were tribal-dwelling folk. If a small child wandered away from the camp, especially at night, chances are it would never be seen again. This fear may have developed simply to make sure we stayed in the safety of our own villages. But suppose, for a moment, that there is some validity to the idea of this supernatural being. Isn't it entirely possible it is not at all evil or malicious? Many people believe in guardian angels. How do we know these aren't simply our guardians keeping an eye on us? The idea that an angel would use fear to keep us safe may sound strange, but the most efficient rulers tend to employ Machiavellian philosophy. It is better to rule with fear than love, but it is better to rule with love than hate. And while we're on the subject of the monster being real, have you ever heard of thought form? Thought form is the manifestation of mental energy. If enough people are pouring energy into the idea of a boogeyman, after a while it will show up. So when you lie awake at night, unable to sleep, what do you think about? Do you think about all the stressful things you have to do the next day? Perhaps it's anticipation for some event that is approaching? Or is it because of the sensation that you are being watched in the dark? The feeling you get from unseen eyes as they silently observe you tossing and turning in bed, the thought of knowing that even though you are safe in your own room, there is a creature lying in wait just beyond the foot of your bed. One school day, a boy named Tom was sitting in class and doing math. It was 6 more minutes until after school. As he was doing his homework, something caught his eye. His desk was next to the window, and he turned and looked to the grass outside. It looked like a picture. When school was over, he ran to the spot where he saw it. He ran fast so that no one else could grab it. He picked it up and smiled. It had a picture of the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. She had a dress with tights on and red shoes, and her hand was formed into a peace sign. She was so beautiful he wanted to meet her. So he ran all over the school and asked everyone if they knew her or have ever seen her before. But everyone he asked said no. He was devastated. When he was home, he asked his older sister if she knew the girl, but unfortunately she also said no. It was very late, so Tom walked up the stairs, placed the picture on his bedside table, and went to sleep. In the middle of the night, Tom was awakened by a tap on his window. It was like a nail tapping. He got scared. After the tapping, he heard a giggle. He saw a shadow near his window, so he got out of his bed, walked toward his window, opened it up, and followed the giggling. By the time he reached it, it was gone. The next day, again, he asked his neighbors if they knew her. Everybody said, sorry, no. When his mother came home, he even asked her if she knew her. She said no. He went to his room, placed the picture on his desk, and fell asleep. Once again, he was awakened by a tapping. He took the picture and followed the giggling. He walked across the road when suddenly he got hit by a car. He was dead with the picture in his hand. The driver got out of the car and tried to help him, but it was too late. Suddenly, he saw the picture and picked it up. He saw a cute girl holding up 3 fingers. Have you ever woke up in the middle of the night or randomly check your watch in the daytime to see the same time over and over again? For me, it's 11:17. I would say 1 out of every 3 times I check my watch, it's 11:17. You may have another one, like 3:33 or 12:50. If you don't have one, count your blessings and stop reading. If you do have a time that you can't seem to shake, follow these instructions. Find the place where you were born. The more specific, the better. The exact room if you can, but sometimes what you're looking for can wander around a bit. Search the room and the surrounding area thoroughly. You should eventually find a safe with a 4-digit keypad combination. You know which 4 digits to enter. Use a 0 first if your hour is below 10. Inside you should find a manila envelope. Take it out, and be careful to note its surprisingly heavy weight, because you don't want to accidentally drop it. With the envelope in hand, get out of there, and make sure nobody saw you. Once you're in a safe place, open the package up. You should find an external hard drive and 2 envelopes. One is labeled Photos. Open that up. You will find a series of Polaroids documenting your life story. Each one will have a date and a brief description printed in the white space. You will have never seen these pictures before or have any recollection of someone taking them. The pictures will often appear to have been taken from secluded areas, as though a stalker took them. Be very careful when looking through these photos that you don't look at any photos beyond today's date, because they are there, and the future is not meant to be known. The other envelope is labeled Certificates, and is nowhere near as thick as the photos envelope. I would advise against looking through this altogether, as it will contain all legal documents from your entire life, from your birth certificate to your marriage license to every driver's license, business license, traffic ticket, and birth certificate that has your name listed under mother or father. Of utmost warning, it also contains your death certificate. Obtain a cheap computer that you won't feel too badly about parting with, and a high-quality printer that is full-on toner and paper, with extras as needed to replace. Make sure the printer drivers are installed properly. Do not plug the hard drive in until you are completely ready to print out all the information you'll find on it. And most importantly, do not connect the computer to the internet. If the computer has wireless capabilities, remove them. It needs to be physically impossible for the machine to connect to the internet on its own. Once you've plugged the hard drive in, don't do anything on the computer. The hard drive has software that will take control from here on out. If you follow the instructions precisely, the printer should be spewing out pages like mad. They will be blueprints, schematics, and mathematical formulae that most people won't have the capacity to understand. If the printer runs out of paper before it's finished, be sure to load more in. You'll know when it's finished because the computer will shut down and never turn on again, and the final printed page will say, "End of instruction set." It will then provide an IP address. Go to that IP address in your web browser. It will prompt you for your 4-digit password. From there, further instructions will be given. About a dozen of us have followed these instructions so far, and comparing our printouts shows that each hard drive only contained a piece of the whole. We don't know how many more pieces there are out there, whether anyone has duplicates, but we're pretty sure we have partial schematics for a working time machine, one that we are destined to construct. I've never been brave enough to look at the photos and documents of my future, but others have taken the plunge. They claim that every time they look at one of their future pictures, the photo has changed, and sometimes the number of photos changes altogether. As a final warning, destroy the hard drive when you are finished. It is unlike anything any of us have ever seen before, and it seems to be able to turn itself on without a power source. I didn't wait around to see if mine made any noises, but reports from the others say that at night it seems to whisper to them.
You are home alone, and you hear on the news about the profile of a murderer who is on the loose. You start to get scared as you look out the sliding glass doors to your backyard, and you notice a man standing out in the snow. As you examine him, you realize that he fits the profile of the murderer exactly. And he's smiling at you. You gulp, picking up the phone to your right and dialing 911. You look back out the glass as you press the phone to your ear and notice he is much closer to you now. You then drop the phone in shock as you realize there are no footprints in the snow. It's his reflection. In January of 2006, in New York, the patient of a well-known psychiatrist draws the face of a man that has been repeatedly appearing in his dreams. In more than one occasion, that man has given him advice on his private life. The man swears that he has never met the man in his life. That portrait lies forgotten on the psychiatrist's desk for a few days until one day, another patient recognizes the face and says that the man has often visited her in her dreams. She also claims she has never seen the man in her waking life. The psychiatrist decides to send the portrait to some of his colleagues that have patients with recurrent dreams. Within a few months, 4 patients recognize the man as a frequent presence in their own dreams. All the patients refer to him as this man. From January 2006 until today, at least 2,000 people have claimed that they have seen this man in their dreams in many cities all over the world: Los Angeles, Berlin, Sao Paulo, Tehran, Beijing, Rome, Barcelona, Stockholm, Paris, New Delhi, Moscow. The list goes on. At the moment, there is no ascertained relation or common trait among the people that have dreamed of seeing this man. No living man has ever been recognized as resembling the man of the portrait by the people who have seen this man in their dreams. In Corona, California, There once was a road known by most locals as the Never-Ending Road. Specifically, the road's true name was Lester Road. And now, over 20 years later, the landscape of Corona has changed, and the Never-Ending Road is no more. However, years ago, Lester Road was an unlit road that people claimed became a never-ending road when driven at night. The people who made such a drive were never seen or heard from again. The legend became so well known that people refused to even drive Lester Road during the day. One night, like many teens my age, I drove up Lester Road, but only for a short distance, and in my headlights, it did look like it went on forever. Frightened, I quickly turned around because I knew that if I continued up the road, I thought I might never return. Perpetuation of the legend convinced local law enforcement to investigate. Lester Road took a sharp left turn at its end, and there were no guardrails. Beyond the turn lay a canyon, and on the other side of the canyon was another road that lined up so well with Lester Road that when viewed from the correct angle, especially at night, the canyon vanished from sight, and the road seemed to continue on up and over the hill on the other side of the canyon. Upon investigation of the canyon, dozens of cars were found, fallen to their doom, with the decomposing bodies of the victims still strapped in their seats. Well, it seems our little countdown's come to an end. All too soon, I know. But everything must come to an end eventually. And as I do end this countdown, I want to thank you all for everything that you have done. All the support is mind-boggling. I know I've said this a million times, but thank you. Thank you all for making my channel and my dream finally become a reality. Now, that story I promised you, it's a little different from the ones we've done so far. This one is longer, and I figure we should go out with a bang on this, my second Halloween on YouTube. But before I do, a special, very, very special thanks to Master O'Horror for all his participation in this and many other videos that I've done. Thank you so much for helping me whenever I've needed it. You are truly a narrating treasure, and a very good friend. Thank you so much for your help. And now, the final story of this Halloween countdown. The thing that stalks the fields. It was a few weeks ago that the hay bale started creeping slowly away from the house. Every morning when I woke up, each had moved a few hundred feet from where it was before. I assumed that it was pranksters with nothing better to do, so I ignored it. Within a few days, though, the bales began to approach the boundaries of the farm. I was tired of the whole game by then, and decided to move them back. It took a tedious hour to bring them all from where they were to over near the house again, and by the time I was done, I was ready to snap the neck of whatever little pissant was deciding to screw with me. The next morning, I found each and every one of my horses messily decapitated. The smell was what woke me up. Each one was slumped over against the side of its stall. There were no signs of the heads, and I spent the rest of the day cleaning up the mess and burying the remains. It was only when I was done that I noticed the bales of hay had all returned to their positions from the day before, scattered far out into the fields. This time, I left them where they were. That night, I sat on my porch with my shotgun in hand, and a pot of coffee on the table beside me. I sat for hours, straining my eyes into the fields to catch a glimpse of who was moving my hay bales. Finally, I was beginning to nod off. I would have, but just as my eyes began to close, I heard a clamor and a rustling of trees from the nearby woods. I leaned forward, my heart racing with excitement. I was finally going to catch this bastard. I fumbled with my gun and fidgeted in my seat, waiting anxiously for whoever it was to get close enough to ambush. And it was only when the thing got close enough for me to make out its silhouette in the dark that I was frozen still. The thing that crept into my fields from the nearby woods didn't seem to notice me sitting there. It stalked, hunched, and deliberate through the field, with the posture of a tiptoeing thief. If not for the fact that it must have towered to over 10 feet tall, even in its crouched position. It might have seemed almost frail. The thinness of its arms and legs, and the emaciated, caved-in quality of its chest reminded me of a starving animal. Still, this thing was undeniably strong, and I watched it hoist each bale up into its arms with ease, and set it down carefully a while away, taking only a few strides to cover the distance. I watched it work, moving each bale thoughtfully. Every once in a while, it would straighten up to look around at the other bale's positions in the field before adjusting the one it was working on ever so slightly. Before it left, it looked towards the house. I felt its eyes sweep over me in the dark, but whether it saw me or not, I couldn't tell. Then it turned silently and crept back the way it came, disappearing into the dark of the woods. It took me an hour before I had the courage to move at all. I went inside after a while, but didn't sleep that night. It was only when the sun rose that I dared step off my porch into the fields. The hay bales were where it left them. Strangely, it didn't move them as far as it had in the previous days. They were approaching something invisible in the fields, and as I looked at them, I realized that they seemed to be marking some line. Indeed, as I walked around the house, I saw the distinct circle that they had formed with me at the center. At first, I thought that the bales were just haphazardly moved away from the house, but now I could see that they were instead being moved towards some boundary. The thing was sending me a message. I slept uneasily that night, and only because I was exhausted. The next morning, the bales hadn't moved at all. They didn't move at all for the rest of that week, in fact. They were finally where the thing wanted them. I made myself sick trying to interpret them. Why would this thing expend so much energy moving my hay bales and threaten me with such violence should I try to interfere? Killing my horses was just that, a threat. An intelligent threat at that. It knew what would scare me, and it knew that I would understand the implications. The sound of an automobile working its way along the road to my farm one morning gave me a little rush of excitement. I'd been planning to abandon the farm since I saw the thing, but I couldn't hope to leave on foot without risking it treating me like it treated my horses. But if I could get in the car with whoever was coming my way, I might be able to escape before it could stop me. I didn't know or care who it was. I decided that moment that when they stopped the car, I would jump in the passenger seat and tell them to get the hell out of here. But I didn't get the chance. The car worked its way slowly along the road, trundling across the uneven ground. I urged it silently to hurry. It was when it passed between the two bales placed on either side of the road that I began to hear a booming clatter from the woods. The thing burst suddenly from between the trees, sprinting on all four of its terrible, gangly limbs toward the car. Within a few seconds it was there, pouncing on the automobile like a predatory cat. Within moments it was picking and peeling the vehicle's steel frame apart, working to get at the driver. The man, whoever he was, screamed all the while, and I could hear him, even over the crunching of metal and the shattering of glass. It was only when the thing crushed him carelessly in its hand that the screaming stopped. It tossed him away and straightened up to look at me once again. In the sunlight I could see the inhumanity of it. It was composed entirely of something awful and alive, which was lashed together in a messy semblance of a human form. Whatever it was made of looked so polished and hard that if it weren't for the minute writhing of the stuff, I'd think it was made of granite. The thing retreated back into the woods, and I was left to my shock. My eyes wandered to where the car sat, the engine still sputtering between two of the hay bales. Suddenly, I understood. The message was clear. I am this thing's captive, and I am not allowed visitors. Nothing may cross the borders it is set. I'm trapped here by the thing that stalks the fields, and it demands nothing except that I never leave. Still, I don't know if I can handle being this thing's canary. I've been thinking hard for the last few days since I saw it crush that man's chest and silence him before he could finish his scream. If I crossed the hay bale border, it'd probably do the same to me. It'd smash my skull before I could put my hands up to protect myself. It'd go and find a new pet, and probably keep looking until it found someone who could stand knowing that it was waiting just outside, watching it all hours with its shiny insect eyes. I've been thinking hard for the last few days, and I might just make a run for it. Maybe, just maybe, I can get away. Well, that's my countdown, everybody. I hope you all enjoyed it. I know I did. Again, thank you to Master O'Horror for being able to help me out on such short notice. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you. Now, everybody out there listening, I hope you are all safe this Halloween weekend. Happy Halloween, everybody.